The story begins with a young boy named Guillaume, who rents a small room in a pirated movie rental shop alongside his older brother, Jun. The shop's owner, their uncle, is a kind man who allows Guillaume to watch all the movies except adult films. As Guillaume grows older, he realizes that frequently watching pirated films doesn't benefit the filmmakers, it harms them instead. As a film enthusiast, Guillaume dreams of contributing to the film industry by becoming an actor. By the time he turns 26, Guillaume starts attending auditions, but his performances are far from impressive. Just as he's about to leave one of these disappointing casting calls, he encounters a beautiful girl with a unique name, Mubi, which sounds like the word movie. Mubi is a stunning young woman who despises her name, wishing she could change the one her father gave her. She grew up without much affection from her father, who, though he loved her, was always too busy making films to be present in her life. This left Mubi craving attention and often acting out. When her father passed away, Mubi discovered his collection of films, which she considered terrible. Now, Mubi works in the film industry to prove to her late father how painful it is to dedicate one's life to making bad movies. Not long after, Guillaume becomes an actor, but only as an extra with insignificant roles. He often ends up bothering the other actors on set. Despite his lack of meaningful roles, Guillaume frequently crosses paths with Mubi during filming. To him, Mubi is like a new movie he's discovered, captivating and unforgettable. While others might not notice her, Guillaume finds her strikingly noticeable among the crew. Mubi often wears black, but her eyes shine brightly. She's quiet yet highly reliable. For some reason, Mubi intrigues Guillaume, though he doesn't realize that she's aware of his interest in her. Mubi finds his constant attempts to approach her and ask nonsensical questions annoying and uncomfortable. Guillaume is the type who gets along with everyone. He's sociable, and even when he's not around, people talk about him. Unfortunately, this is precisely what Mubi dislikes about him. She finds him disruptive to her desire for a peaceful life and makes this clear to him. She doesn't want him near her or even talking to her, but Guillaume only finds her more enchanting. He mistakenly believes she feels the same way, imagining their story as a melodramatic film. Determined, Guillaume continues to pursue her, convinced they're destined to be together. This belief is reinforced when they coincidentally meet at a friend's wedding, where Guillaume is the host and Mubi is filming the event. To them, it feels like fate. One day, the film crew travels to a shooting location by bus. At first, Mubi assumes Guillaume will sit with her, but when he chooses to sit with someone else, she feels a pang of disappointment and eventually falls asleep. When Mubi wakes up, they've arrived, and she discovers that Guillaume has been taking photos of her while she slept, teasing her about it. After the shoot, by sheer coincidence, both Guillaume and Mubi miss the bus back. Forced to wait for the next one, they sit together and begin to get to know each other. At that moment, Guillaume asks if Mubi is always this peculiar. She doesn't answer directly, but instead questions whether Guillaume is always pretending to be cheerful. Hearing this, Guillaume realizes that the girl he's infatuated with is sharp-tongued and quick-witted. He then asks her, as an assistant director, if she wants to make a film someday and what kind of film it would be. Mubi replies that she wants to create a truly remarkable melodrama. Guillaume is surprised to learn they share the same favorite genre. Mubi then asks if Guillaume plans to keep acting. He responds with certainty, saying he loves movies or films so much that he can't imagine doing anything else. His words seem to hint at his growing feelings for Mubi, as if he's subtly confessing his affection through his love for the art they both cherish. Shortly after, the bus they had been waiting for finally arrived. During the ride, Mubi fell asleep and had a dream about her father, which startled her awake, tears streaming down her face. In her daze, she accidentally grabbed Guillaume's hand. Embarrassed, Mubi quickly apologized, saying she had been careless. Though curious about what had upset her, Guillaume chose to stay silent. Not long after, the film production wrapped up, and it was time for the farewell dinner. As usual, Mubi avoided the crowd and slipped away alone. Guillaume, noticing her absence, followed her. Seizing the moment, he asked why she always kept her distance from others. Mubi replied that people always leave eventually, and she didn't want to be left alone again. She added that someone like Guillaume, who always pretended to be cheerful, would probably be the first to walk away. This makes Guillaume even more sure of his feelings for her. He approaches and asks if Mubi will like him if he tells her his secret. However, Mubi didn't answer with words. Instead, she took his hand and kissed him. Guillaume, surprised, asked if she was being careless again. Mubi shook her head and kissed him once more. It was revealed that Mubi found herself drawn to Guillaume. Ever since she was a child, she had always felt pity for things that seemed sad or abandoned. She would try to care for them, like the stray puppy she brought home or the neighborhood boy who was bullied, whom she treated like a younger brother. But everything she cared for eventually disappeared: her dog, her neighbor, and now her father. Then she met Guillaume, a man who was always seeking attention, acting strangely, and pretending to be cheerful. For some reason, she was intrigued by him. However, just as they shared that kiss and Mubi began to open her heart, Guillaume suddenly vanished. Rather than dwell on it, Mubi decided to forget him and threw herself into her work, determined to make her film. She resolved to think of Guillaume as gone, just like everyone else. The scene then reveals the reason for Guillaume's disappearance is because his older brother, June, had a serious accident and was rushed to the hospital. For weeks, June lay in a hospital bed, and Guillaume was the only one by his side. He stayed with June through rehabilitation, never leaving the hospital. As for work, Guillaume transitioned to becoming a film critic, running a small blog where he reviewed current movies. Occasionally, he took on part-time construction jobs. He did whatever it took to support June, and before he knew it, 5 years had passed. One day, Guillaume attended the premiere of a newly released film. As a film critic, he was invited to the screening, which happened to be directed by Mubi. Initially, Guillaume only planned to watch the film, but seeing Mubi there reignited his desire to be part of her life. In response, he joined the Q&A session after the screening. As a result, Mubi was shocked to see Guillaume there as a critic. During the session, Guillaume asked if this was truly a melodrama, pointing out how pessimistic and bleak the story was. For some reason, Mubi felt irritated by his words. They lingered in her mind, unsettling her. Why had Guillaume, whom she thought was gone for good, suddenly reappeared in her life? Meanwhile, June had grown curious about Guillaume's life over the years. His younger brother had done nothing but care for him and work. Guillaume never talked about his own life anymore, though June remembered him once mentioning someone he liked. When asked, Guillaume simply said he was fine and that he'd been too young back then. Not long after, as a film critic, Guillaume was invited to the premiere of a film directed by a senior director. He arrived with Song-nga, a director who had once hired him, and from a distance, he spotted Mubi. When Mubi caught sight of Guillaume's face, she felt a mix of concern and relief. He looked as though he had just returned from a long journey, his face etched with exhaustion that was hard to put into words. Guillaume wanted to approach her and ask how she had been, but before he could, Mubi had to leave and head into the studio. The film was about to start. After the screening, Mubi left early to avoid Guillaume. But as she searched for her car keys, she realized they were missing. Just then, she was startled to see Guillaume running toward her. At first, she thought he was following her, but it turned out he was returning her lost car keys. At that moment, Guillaume handed them over without explanation, prompting Mubi to ask how long he had been a film critic and whether he had attended her premiere just to review her film. Guillaume simply replied that he had wanted to see her first film. Mubi pressed further, asking if he had been sick or even imprisoned for some crime. Guillaume remained silent, which only frustrated her. She declared that from now on, they were enemies. After all, directors and film critics were natural adversaries. She also made it clear that she didn't want to see him again. Sometime later, Mubi's mother informed her that the house across the street had been sold. It once belonged to the boy Mubi had considered a younger brother, the one who was often bullied. The new owners had made some renovations to accommodate a wheelchair for one of the residents. When Mubi went to greet the new neighbors, she was shocked to find Guillaume and his brother, June, living there. At first, she thought Guillaume had followed her yet again, even going so far as to move in next door. However, it turned out that June had chosen the house, and fate had brought them together once more, this time as neighbors and enemies. Perhaps they were meant to grow closer after all. Living next to Guillaume filled Mubi's days with a mix of irritation and unease. Her frustration grew when she noticed that Guillaume had visited all the neighbors to hand out rice cakes, except her. To Mubi, his behavior became even more annoying now that he was no longer bothering her. Meanwhile, Guillaume was simply trying his best to respect her wishes, as she had explicitly told him not to appear in front of her again. He even asked June why he had chosen this house, as Guillaume needed a reason to face Mubi. But the more he tried to avoid her, the more their paths seemed to cross. Over time, Guillaume began to see sides of Mubi he had never noticed before. There were layers to her personality that surprised him. One day, a man arrived at Mubi's house and called her big sister. Guillaume realized how much he had missed in her life. The man was Jong-hoo, Mubi's childhood neighbor who had moved to America and lost contact with her. After catching up, Jong-hoo crossed the street to Guillaume's house, noticing him peeking toward Mubi's place. He asked if Guillaume knew the beautiful woman across the street, but Guillaume denied it. Jong-hoo then inquired if a toy box of his had been left behind when Guillaume moved in. Unexpectedly, Guillaume teased him, leaving Jong-hoo convinced that his new neighbor was a strange man. That evening, Guillaume and June hosted a housewarming party, inviting their friends. During the gathering, Guillaume confided in a friend about reconnecting with Mubi, the girl he had once been infatuated with. His friend grew annoyed with Guillaume's indecisiveness, telling him that if he no longer had feelings for Mubi, he should stop paying attention to her. But if he still liked her, he should apologize for leaving her behind, as the one who is left behind often suffers more. After the party ended, Guillaume asked June why he had chosen this house. The reason, it turned out, was simple. June loved the large white wall in their yard. He remembered Guillaume once saying he wanted a house with a big white wall so they could watch movies together. So, June had bought this house for Guillaume's sake. Hearing this, Guillaume felt a mix of frustration and guilt. Once again, his brother had put him first, even though Guillaume wished June would do something for himself for once. One night, Guillaume noticed Mubi returning home drunk. Worried, he followed her to make sure she got home safely. However, Mubi, feeling someone was trailing her, called the police. When the officers arrived, Guillaume tried to explain that he knew her, but as a new resident, the police weren't convinced. Fortunately, Mubi sobered up enough to vouch for him. On their way back, Mubi confronted Guillaume, asking why he hadn't apologized for disappearing on her. She told him that he should have apologized long ago, or everything was just a joke to him. In response, Guillaume finally apologized sincerely, and Mubi, without another word, went inside her house. The next day, Guillaume visited the offices of several film directors for interviews as part of his work as a film critic. After stopping by Sungha's office, he also visited Mubi's. As a result, Mubi was surprised they had parted ways at the bus station earlier that morning. Yet here they were, meeting again in her office. After asking a few standard questions about her film, Guillaume ventured off topic, asking why her name was Mubi. He pointed out how it sounded like movie and wondered if it was because she loved films. Mubi replied that she hated films. She hated how people glorified them, treating them as something worthy of obsession. She became a director to prove to her father, who had given her the name, that she could make films without romanticizing them. For her, it was just a job. Feeling the interview had gone on long enough, Mubi tried to end it. But Guillaume surprised her by asking her to watch a movie with him. He said he wanted to learn how to apologize properly and thought this might be a good way to start. Mubi appreciated the gesture, but declined. That evening, Guillaume waited for Mubi to return home from work. Once she was inside, he He set up a projector to watch a movie on the large white wall in his yard. Mubi, noticing the strange light outside, stepped out and realized what Guillaume had meant earlier by inviting her to watch a film together. Guillaume was the kind of person who lived life at his own pace. He believed that everyone's life had its own balance. When misfortune struck, good things were bound to follow. Earlier that day, Guillaume's car had broken down. Instead of getting upset, Guillaume saw it as an opportunity to relax and enjoy his favorite snack, boiled corn. Later, as he drove home, a heavy rain started and his windshield wipers stopped working. Forced to pull over and fix them himself, Guillaume remained optimistic. True to his belief, something good did happen. Mubi appeared, holding an umbrella and helping him fix the wipers. To Guillaume, she was the good thing that followed his streak of bad luck. Not long after, Guillaume was approached by an agency offering to make him a famous critic. They promised to elevate his career beyond his blog, giving him opportunities to appear in magazines, on TV, YouTube, and radio. Though Guillaume was content with his current achievements, the lucrative offer was hard to refuse. Soon, he became a well-known film critic, appearing everywhere. One day, Guillaume wrote a scathing review of a film directed by Mubi's uncle, Yang Sik. The critique was so harsh that the film flopped, losing its audience. Shortly after, news broke that Yang Sik had attempted to do the unthinkable by overdosing on sleeping pills. Thankfully, his family rushed him to the hospital, and he survived. The incident left Guillaume deeply unsettled, prompting him to visit Yang Sik at the hospital. Unaware that reporters were swarming the hospital for the story, Guillaume found himself surrounded. They bombarded him with questions that cornered him. Despite this, Guillaume stayed silent, listening to their questions without responding. Moments later, Yang Sik's daughter arrived and told everyone, especially Guillaume, to leave immediately because her father needed rest. Afterward, Songa invited Guillaume out for a drink, having heard about the trouble he was facing. Mubi was also there. As Songa tried to comfort Guillaume, a friend suddenly arrived and asked Songa to step outside for a smoke, leaving Guillaume and Mubi alone. At that moment, Mubi asked if Guillaume was okay, but before he could respond, another director stormed in, furious at Guillaume for having criticized his film in the past. The director lashed out, saying that if Yang Sik had died from his doing the unthinkable attempt, it would have been entirely Guillaume's fault. Mubi quickly intervened, pulling Guillaume out of the situation. Outside, Mubi told Guillaume not to let the director's words bother him. Instead of feeling relieved that Mubi had defended him, Guillaume shrugged it off, saying he wasn't worried. He argued that Yang Sik's film deserved criticism and that not every film was meant to succeed. Besides, none of this was his fault. Mubi retorted that Guillaume lacked empathy. This wasn't about the film or whose fault it was about someone being hurt. She understood that people were looking for a scapegoat, and Guillaume had become a target. Despite this, Guillaume accused Mubi of being just like the others, blaming him too. Mubi fell silent, unable to respond. Before leaving, she told Guillaume that she and Songa had only wanted to comfort him because they were worried. But Guillaume's indifference made it seem like he didn't care about anyone's feelings but his own. This, she said, was why she couldn't forgive him and why her dislike for him only grew, because he was selfish and oblivious to the people around him. Later, Mubi visited Yang Sik, her uncle, in the hospital. Fortunately, he was recovering well and was no longer in critical condition. Mubi asked him what had really happened. Yang Sik explained that he hadn't tried to do the unthinkable. The media had twisted the story. Recently, he had been struggling with insomnia and, after drinking heavily, accidentally took too many sleeping pills. Relieved to hear the truth, Mubi told her uncle to rest and left the room. As she walked out, Yang Sik mentioned that a film critic had been lingering around, bothering him. Mubi realized he was talking about Guillaume, who was sitting outside in the hospital hallway. She approached him and asked what he was doing there. Guillaume simply said he was waiting for something good to happen, and that something good turned out to be seeing her. In Mubi's mind, seeing Guillaume like this reopened old wounds. She had always been too easily moved by things that seemed sad or pitiful, like Guillaume. In the end, she offered to take him home. On the way, Guillaume confessed that he wanted to fall for her again. He wondered why Mubi, who had always been so cold, had once liked him enough to kiss him first. It was because of the small gestures of attention Guillaume had shown her, which had slowly won her over. But this time, when Guillaume declared his feelings, Mubi rejected him outright. She even kicked his leg to make sure he understood she wasn't interested in repeating the past. The next morning, Guillaume stared intently at Mubi's house, so much so that June grew suspicious. June joked that Guillaume might be planning to rob their neighbor's house. In a way, Guillaume was after something from that house, the beautiful woman who lived there. June remarked that Mubi was a good person, surprising Guillaume, who hadn't realized June knew her. June was equally surprised to learn that the girl Guillaume had once liked was Mubi. Sometime later, Songa invited Guillaume to a gathering with other directors. There, Guillaume ran into the director who had berated him earlier. Guillaume tried to explain that his intentions as a critic were good. He wasn't trying to tear anyone down, but to offer constructive feedback to improve the film industry. Moments later, the director asked why Guillaume had become a film critic. Guillaume replied simply, because he loved films. The director smiled, saying he loved films too, which was why he had become a director. But now, he was considering quitting because he feared he was starting to hate films. Guillaume's reviews had made him realize he might not be cut out for this field, and he wanted to stop before it was too late. The night ended with everyone drinking heavily. The next thing Guillaume knew, he woke up in his own room, clutching someone's cardigan. He had no memory of how he got there or what had happened the night before. The scene shifts to show that before Guillaume returned home, June had struggled when his walking stick got stuck. Fortunately, Mubi was there to help. June thanked her, as Mubi had always been kind to him. When they first moved in, she had also helped him after he was hit by a motorcycle. Mubi was truly a good-hearted woman. She remarked that June spoke so politely and gently, unlike Guillaume. Hearing this, June laughed, saying that while Guillaume was rough around the edges, he was also thoughtful and kind. However, recalling Guillaume's behavior the previous night, June felt embarrassed in front of Mubi. Guillaume, drunk, had loudly shouted her name, begging her not to block his number. He had even tugged at her cardigan until it ended up in his hands. Not long after, Mubi came to retrieve her cardigan. She warned Guillaume that if he caused another drunken scene like last night, she wouldn't hesitate to call the police. Instead of feeling remorseful, Guillaume took it as a sign that Mubi cared about him, even though she could have called the police already. June was baffled by Guillaume's reasoning, wondering if his brother was still drunk. Later, inside the house, Mubi's mother informed her that one of her father's old friends had called, asking her to organize a community movie night, something her father used to do. Meanwhile, Guillaume learned about this from Jong-hoo, who visited him at home. As Mubi prepared for the event, she was surprised to see Guillaume helping out as part of the staff. The movie night was a tradition her father had started when Mubi was a child. Every summer, he would collaborate with filmmakers to set up an outdoor screening for the neighborhood, free of charge. As the evening approached, everyone gathered to watch the film. Mubi was annoyed to see Jong-hoo getting along with Guillaume, and they even invited her to join them. At the same time, Mubi's mother noticed how attentive Guillaume was to her daughter, sensing there might be something between them. As the night deepened, Mubi's mother, Jong-hoo, and June left early, leaving Mubi and Guillaume alone. At that moment, Mubi observed how engrossed Guillaume was in the film. She asked why he was so captivated, even though he had seen it before. Guillaume replied that each viewing felt different, the second, third, or even 10th time. It was because he loved movies, a word that sounded so much like her name, Mubi. Hearing this, Mubi found herself drawn in, but it scared her. She remembered how her father had introduced her to films, his enthusiasm shining through. Yet, she realized her father hadn't loved her as much as he loved films. He had always been too busy, leaving her behind. Mubi feared that whenever she started to care for something, it would inevitably leave her. Unable to bear Guillaume's confession and her own emotions, she decided to leave. In response, Guillaume grabbed her hand, but Mubi brushed him off. Acting quickly, Guillaume chased after her, urging her to stop running away. However, Mubi told him to stop playing games. Not giving up, Guillaume insisted he wasn't. His feelings for her were genuine. This immediately makes Mubi doubt him, since he once made her heart flutter and gave her hope, only to disappear without a word. Guillaume interrupted her, asking if that meant she had feelings for him too. He pointed out that she had been the one to kiss him first to initiate their connection. Why was she denying it now? Despite her pulling away, Guillaume admitted his feelings hadn't changed. He still loved her. He hugged her tightly, declaring that this time, he would be the one to start their relationship. Guillaume had a habit of sudden, dramatic gestures, just like in the melodramatic films he adored. The next day, Mubi was still confused about what had happened the previous night. Her mother told her that if she truly liked Guillaume, their neighbor, she should accept her feelings. After all, Guillaume was a good man. Her mother didn't want Mubi to wait too long and regret it if Guillaume eventually gave up and left. Meanwhile, Guillaume went to Songa's office, where he learned that one of the crew members had suddenly passed away from overwork. The film industry's grueling hours were notorious. At that moment, Songa also mentioned that whenever there was news of a crew member's death, it was often linked to the death of Mubi's father. He, too, had died suddenly on set from exhaustion, and the news had caused quite a stir at the time. Hearing this, Guillaume immediately thought of Mubi. As he passed by a pizza shop, he decided to call her. Guillaume told her he was at the pizza place near the intersection close to their homes. Since Mubi usually avoided him, he suggested that if she wanted, they could accidentally run into each other and share a pizza, as if he were subtly inviting her to join him. Guillaume then waited for her. At first, he thought she wouldn't come, so he ordered food for himself. To his surprise, Mubi actually showed up, and they ended up eating pizza together. It wasn't just that day. Guillaume began paying more attention to Mubi. Out of the blue, he told her to bring an umbrella on a scorching hot day. And sure enough, that evening, as Mubi was leaving work, it poured heavily. Later, Guillaume waited for her at a convenience store, pretending their meeting was coincidental, and they ended up grabbing drinks together. Eventually, their relationship grew closer, to the point where Mubi didn't hesitate to cook barbecue with Guillaume, and June the three of them even watched movies together in Guillaume's backyard. Every day, Guillaume would wait for Mubi to finish work, and they would walk home together. After parting ways at their respective houses, Guillaume suggests that they would accidentally meet again in front of the takoyaki shop. The next day, Guillaume bought flowers, planning to surprise Mubi. But as he walked, he noticed his brother, June, lost in thought, about to cross the street. Guillaume called out to him, but June didn't respond. Guillaume quickly grabbed his brother, and only then did June snap out of his daze. Meanwhile, Mubi waited for Guillaume at the takoyaki shop. The night grew late, and the shop eventually closed. In the end, Mubi returned home with a head full of questions, wondering why Guillaume hadn't shown up or contacted her. At home, June apologized to Guillaume. He admitted he had been lost in thought, but assured Guillaume he was fine. Guillaume asked why June never seemed shocked or scared, even when everyone around him was panicking. June always remained calm, as if nothing ever bothered him. Even after waking up from his coma following the accident, June had been unfazed. Guillaume wanted to ask him something more, but he held back and decided to go calm himself instead. The next morning, Guillaume was startled to find June sleeping beside him. June said it had been a long time since they'd slept in the same room, and he apologized to Guillaume. At that moment, Guillaume found it a little strange. He wasn't a child anymore, and sharing a bed with his brother felt odd. As they prepared for breakfast, Jong-hoo suddenly arrived with boiled potatoes for them to share. He had come hoping to hang out with Mubi, but she had told him she was busy. As a result, Guillaume remembered he still hadn't contacted Mubi to explain what had happened. Guillaume was about to send her a message when, unexpectedly, Mubi showed up at their door. She asked if Guillaume was busy that day, as she had some work that required his help. Guillaume replied that as long as he was with her, he would never be too busy. In the end, the two left together in Guillaume's car. While Guillaume and Mubi were away, Jongho stayed behind with June. Jongho suggested they watch a movie together, but June suddenly fell asleep. He seemed utterly exhausted, so Jongho helped him to his room to rest. On the other hand, Guillaume and Mubi drove to a distant location. They passed through a breathtaking field of flowers, but then Guillaume's car broke down again. Stranded in the middle of nowhere, they had to wait for a mechanic to arrive. As they waited, Mubi remarked that despite being busy, they had run into yet another misfortune. Guillaume quickly pointed out that they were supposed to be out for fun, not work. After all, if Mubi had really been planning to work, she would have brought her work materials. This meant she had intentionally asked him out. Mubi smiled, admitting that she had indeed wanted to spend time with Guillaume because there was something she needed to talk about. At one moment, Mubi finally asked about the reason Guillaume had disappeared 5 years ago. Was it because of his brother? At first, Mubi hadn't given it much thought, but after seeing June's condition, she began to piece things together. Guillaume was puzzled why she was only asking now. Mubi explained that she had avoided digging into complicated matters, especially since she disliked getting close to people who might leave her. She hated those who disappeared without a word. Yet, the more she got to know Guillaume, even though he did things she didn't like, she found herself increasingly drawn to him. In the end, Mubi admitted she had feelings for Guillaume. Guillaume fell silent, stunned. He hadn't expected his life with Mubi to feel so much like a melodrama. Overcome with emotion, he leaned in and kissed her. Guillaume was certain their story would have a happy ending. One morning during breakfast, June wanted to tell Guillaume something. It turned out that, according to the doctor, June's condition was concerning. His heart and lung function had declined significantly, which explained why he often seemed so tired, lost in thought, or suddenly fell asleep. June thought it might be because he had stopped going to rehabilitation. Despite this, he assured Guillaume not to worry, as he would be fine if he resumed his treatments. Though Guillaume nodded, deep down he was anxious. June had never been one to show his emotions. After their parents passed away, June had dedicated his life to taking care of Guillaume. At just 20 years old, June had sacrificed his youth, working tirelessly to support them. June had once been scolded by his boss, but he hadn't reacted with anger or sadness. He simply accepted it quietly. The only time Guillaume ever saw his brother express emotion was when they watched sad movies together. June would cry. In the past, Guillaume had noticed that June had saved up a significant amount of money. When Guillaume asked what June planned to buy, June instead asked what Guillaume wanted. It seemed June's entire life revolved around Guillaume, spending his days off sleeping or watching TV with him, as if his sole purpose was to be by Guillaume's side. Then, suddenly, June had been in an accident. During June's time in the hospital, not a single friend or lover came to visit him. It was then that Guillaume realized how lonely his brother's life had been. He also came to understand that he didn't truly know June as well as he thought. Determined to uncover the cause of the accident, Guillaume spent days retracing June's steps around the scene, but he found no answers. He even began to wonder if June had intentionally caused the accident to do the unthinkable. Back in the present, as Guillaume was lost in these thoughts, Mubi suddenly appeared and snapped him out of it. Guillaume immediately went to her and hugged her tightly. Mubi reminded him to be careful, as her mother lived across the street and could see them together. Guillaume then joked that ever since they officially started dating, Mubi had started acting like a tough guy, calling him names instead of sweet nothings. He longed to hear her call him honey, but the thought made Mubi cringe. As usual, Guillaume walked Mubi to the bus station before heading to her mother's butcher shop. Besides buying meat, he also introduced himself as Mubi's new boyfriend. Apparently, Guillaume was confident Mubi's mother would approve of their relationship. Not only that, Mubi's mother had always known this day would come, though she wasn't sure if Guillaume could handle her daughter's strong personality. Mubi might seem gentle on the outside, but she was a resilient woman. If Guillaume expected her to be soft and submissive, their relationship would never work. But Guillaume was certain he could handle Mubi. He loved her precisely because of her strength. Mubi's mother then asked Guillaume about his weaknesses. From what she could see, Guillaume was cheerful, kind-hearted, and had his life together, almost too perfect. She wanted to know if he had any flaws. Guillaume admitted that he often struggled with thoughts he couldn't express or resolve. Mubi's mother advised him to share those thoughts with others, even if they sounded harsh or painful. Keeping everything bottled up, she warned, would only lead to more problems. That evening, as they prepared dinner, Jong-hoo mentioned that June wanted to eat out and had already reserved a table in a nice restaurant. Guillaume was surprised. June usually preferred to stay home and eat soup. Since Mubi had just returned from work, the four of them went out for a meal together. The next day, June unexpectedly asked Guillaume if he was busy. If not, June wanted to go out and enjoy some fresh air. Though puzzled by his brother's sudden request, Guillaume took him out anyway. June even suggested stopping by a cafe owned by one of Guillaume's friends from the film studio. Later, June invited a few friends over to watch a movie at home. It was unusual for June to express so many emotions and desires all at once. Then, one night, June announced that he wanted to travel abroad. Guillaume agreed, but insisted they wait until June's health improved. June refused, saying he was fine and had already found some cheap flights for the following month. Guillaume grew frustrated and asked why June had been acting so strangely lately, suddenly wanting to do so many things. His behavior made it seem like he was preparing to leave soon. June countered by asking why Guillaume wouldn't just let him do what he wanted. He then admitted that he didn't know how much time he had left. He could feel death approaching. June explained that he wanted Guillaume to be prepared for what was coming. It turned out that Guillaume knew June wasn't just fulfilling last wishes before death. He was worried about leaving Guillaume behind. All this time, Guillaume had suffered greatly, doing everything he could to keep his brother alive. But now, June wanted Guillaume to help him die peacefully. This made Guillaume feel as though June hadn't considered his feelings at all. In the heat of the moment, Guillaume lost control of his emotions and accidentally spilled hot water on his hand. June immediately rushed to get a wet towel to soothe the burn. Even in the middle of their argument, June was still worrying about Guillaume, which only frustrated Guillaume more. He snapped, asking June if he had ever truly tried to stay alive. It felt like June was in a hurry to leave this world, abandoning Guillaume when he still needed his brother. As Guillaume stormed out, June broke down in tears. Later that night, Guillaume wandered out into the pouring rain. Coincidentally, Mubi was just returning from work. Seeing Guillaume standing alone in the rain, she didn't ask any questions. She simply held an umbrella over him and led him to her car. Shortly after, June was readmitted to the hospital for treatment. At the same time, Jong-hoo helped Guillaume pack the necessary items to bring to the hospital. While gathering June's belongings, Jong-hoo almost packed a diary, which Guillaume quickly took. Jong-hoo mentioned that he often saw June reading it, so he assumed it belonged to him. Curious, Guillaume opened the diary and discovered that June had written something for him. In the diary, June wrote that he had once believed he had no desires of his own. But after their parents passed away, he realized how much Guillaume needed him. From that moment, June decided to dedicate his life to making Guillaume happy. He wanted to ensure Guillaume would never feel lonely. June worked tirelessly, sacrificing his youth, all for his younger brother. He worked from morning till night, driven solely by the desire to see Guillaume happy. Seeing Guillaume smile brought him joy. June even allowed himself to show anger when others looked down on Guillaume. Everything June did in life was for Guillaume, which was why he wanted to keep living. He wanted to stay by Guillaume's side. However, as time passed, June couldn't keep his promise to stay alive. He passed away during a delayed rehabilitation attempt. Guillaume, too, failed to keep his promise to take June on a trip. After June's death, Guillaume continued living as usual. Not much changed in his life, except that his friends now frequently checked on him, sending messages to express their concern. During this time, Guillaume spent most of his time with Mubi. They often ate together, chatting and laughing over trivial things, just like any other couple. But lately, Mubi had grown anxious whenever she saw Guillaume lost in thought, staring into the distance. She couldn't let this continue. One evening, Mubi looked deeply into Guillaume's eyes and told him she was transferring her energy to him, hoping to give him the strength to face life with renewed vigor. After Mubi went inside, she glanced back at Guillaume, who hesitated before entering the house. But in that moment, she felt certain he would be okay. The next morning, Guillaume was at Songa's office. This was where he often spent his time, playing around with Songa, who never got angry even when Guillaume criticized his films. The two of them would talk and joke around for hours. Meanwhile, Mubi waited for Guillaume to come home that night, but he never showed up. She assumed he was busy with work. Jong-hoo, who was there, pointed out that it was unlikely Guillaume was working late, as freelancers like him usually stayed home. Since June's passing, Guillaume had been acting strangely, pretending everything was fine when, in reality, he was suffering alone. Mubi sighed, saying that maybe Guillaume just needed some time to himself. Suddenly, Jong-hoo hugged Mubi. He reminded her that she had always been there for him in the past. Jong-hoo apologized for not being there when Mubi was alone and grieving the loss of her father. Later that night, as Mubi woke up from her sleep, she checked her phone and saw a message from Guillaume saying he had returned home. When she glanced toward his house, it was completely dark with no lights on. Mubi assumed Guillaume had already fallen asleep. The next morning, as she woke up, Mubi saw Guillaume sitting in his car, lost in thought. Mubi immediately went to him and realized he had been sleeping in the car instead of inside the house. Guillaume was silent for a moment, trying to sort through his emotions. He finally said that his house felt empty. Mubi understood what he meant, but she wished he had confided in her sooner. It seemed like Guillaume was pushing her away, refusing her concern. He insisted he was fine now, but Mubi stopped in her tracks, not wanting to make him uncomfortable by worrying too much. That night, when Guillaume still refused to go inside, Mubi joined him in the car. She didn't say much. She simply wanted to transfer her energy to him, hoping to give him strength. She also suggested that the next morning they should go home together. What she meant was that she would temporarily move into Guillaume's house. She planned to treat his home as her new office, coming back to sleep there often. She hoped Guillaume would welcome her and even make her a warm bowl of soup, giving them a glimpse of what their married life might look like. At work, Mubi reminded Guillaume that she would be coming home early and hoped he would be there to greet her. However, that day turned out to be busier than expected, and she ended up working late. When she finally arrived at Guillaume's house, it was completely dark. Panicking, Mubi thought Guillaume wasn't home. She was startled when Guillaume appeared, holding a candle. It turned out he hadn't paid the electricity bill, and the power had been cut off. Mubi, who had been on edge, burst into tears. She had been genuinely scared, thinking Guillaume wasn't there. Through her tears, she told him that he wasn't alone anymore. She was by his side because she had truly fallen in love with him. Even though Mubi was staying at Guillaume's house, they slept in separate rooms. But one night, Guillaume woke up and found Mubi sleeping soundly in his room. Without thinking twice, he sat beside her and fell back asleep. The next morning, when Guillaume woke up, he noticed Mubi was already awake but pretending to still be asleep. Guillaume leaned in, intending to kiss her, but Mubi suddenly sat up, saying they shouldn't do such things on the bed. Guillaume smirked mischievously, pulling her toward the wall instead and kissing her there. If the bed was off limits, he figured there were other places. In a soft voice, Mubi asked if it would be better for her to stay there forever. Guillaume was startled by her words, which annoyed Mubi. He asked what she meant by wanting to live together permanently. Mubi explained that as long as her mother didn't find out, they could live together. Unbeknownst to them, Mubi's mother happened to step outside and overheard their conversation. She pretended not to notice and quickly left. As Mubi left for work, Guillaume stayed behind to clean the house. He decided to get rid of June's wheelchair, walking stick, and favorite chair, fearing that the memories of his brother would make it even harder for him to stay in the house. Meanwhile, at the office, Mubi received bad news. Her film project had been canceled because the investor ran out of funds. Mubi had to face the harsh reality that the melodrama she had been so passionate about would not move forward. With mixed emotions, Mubi returned to her mother's house. When she arrived, her mother commented on her finally coming home after staying over at Guillaume's place. Mubi apologized and explained that nothing inappropriate had happened. She simply wanted to support Guillaume during this difficult time after June's passing. However, her mother pointed out that if Guillaume was the one struggling, why did Mubi look so downcast herself? Finally, Mubi admitted that her film project had been canceled. Her mother was shocked, but even more disappointed that Mubi seemed ready to give up so easily. Unlike her father, who had always fought for his films until the very end, Mubi was willing to walk away. Her mother reminded her that giving up halfway meant abandoning the people who had worked hard alongside her. Mubi responded bitterly, saying she wasn't as foolish as her father. He had loved films so much that he neglected his own child. He had never cared about her, only working himself to the bone for meager pay. Her mother might have accepted his behavior, but Mubi never could. She even hated her name, a gift from her father that now felt like a sad reminder of his neglect. The next day, Mubi went to Songa's office to seek advice. Songa had also faced canceled projects in the past. He told her that when he was younger, he didn't let setbacks stop him. He kept searching for investors and fighting for his films, which was how he had reached his current position. Songa added that Mubi was still a new director. If she gave up after facing just one obstacle, she would never succeed. He encouraged her to approach other production companies or find new investors. If she truly wanted to tell her story, she needed to fight harder. Not long after, Mubi returned to her office and looked over her work. She began to wonder if she should really give up. Exhausted, she eventually fell asleep and dreamed of her father. In the dream, she asked him why he had become a filmmaker. He explained that he had stories he wanted to tell. When Mubi woke up, she felt restless. Every time she dreamed of her father, she was left with a lingering sense of fear and anxiety. In response, she decided to go see Guillaume, who had already heard about her struggles from Songa. Without saying a word, Guillaume pulled her into a hug and told her he was transferring his energy to her. On their way home, Guillaume kept trying to cheer Mubi up. He was confident that she would be okay and that she would eventually bring her dream melodrama to life. However, he couldn't help but ask why it had to be a melodrama. Mubi smiled bitterly and explained that melodramas were about people who loved each other. Since she was a child, her father had always told her stories about love, which might be why she longed to be loved so much. After a moment of silence, Mubi finally spoke in a soft voice, asking if Guillaume would still like her if she shared her secret. Guillaume fell silent as Mubi continued, confessing that she felt her father's death was her fault. After Mubi opened up about her fears, Guillaume realized that sometimes you have to voice your thoughts to truly understand them. It turned out that Mubi shared a similar fate with him. They both carried childhood traumas. With a trembling voice, Mubi began to tell her story. She had hated her father. He was always busy with his films. Every year on her birthday, he was never there. Even when they watched movies together, he would let go of her hand to chat with his colleagues, prioritizing his film world over her. The growing disappointment led Mubi to decide she would never acknowledge him in front of anyone. She chose to hate him. But one night, everything changed. Her father was scammed by an investor, and for the first time, Mubi saw him cry. Though hatred still filled her heart, she couldn't bear to see him in such a state. Not long after, devastating news arrived. Her father had passed away. Mubi was shattered and felt it was all her fault. Even though she had spent her life hating him, deep down, she never wanted to lose him. All she had ever wanted was a father who would love her. Mubi and Guillaume spent the rest of the evening under the night sky, gazing at the twinkling stars in silence. Mubi asked why Guillaume loved film so much. After a pause, Guillaume admitted it was because he was terrified of being alone. That was the secret he had kept hidden. Growing up, he had been afraid of being left behind by his brother. June films became his escape, something that was always there for him. It was hard for Guillaume to pretend to be cheerful all the time, especially when the fear of losing June haunted him. Even when he found out that June had considered doing the unthinkable, Guillaume had stayed silent. Fear consumed him, fear that it was all his fault. Mubi sighed and whispered that death was truly heartbreaking. The next day, as Mubi's mother was about to leave the house, Guillaume arrived with flowers, not just a bouquet, but an entire cart full of them. He knew Mubi's mother loved flowers, but she refused them, saying she didn't want to plant them alone. Guillaume ended up planting the flowers in Mubi's yard himself. As they chatted, Mubi's mother asked if Guillaume still struggled to express what he wanted to say. Guillaume smiled bitterly, saying the person who usually listened to him was no longer there. Mubi's mother looked at him gently and said that even if they couldn't be seen, they were still there. However, something bothered her. She was a little disappointed that Mubi had chosen someone so similar to herself. If Guillaume was truly worthy of Mubi, he needed to listen to her heart from time to time. After all, Mubi, just like Guillaume, had no one else to lean on. As Mubi's mother left, Mubi waited for her return while gazing at the flowers Guillaume had just planted. When her mother came back, Mubi asked what her father had been like. Her mother smiled faintly and said that her husband had often suffered more than he had been happy, but she understood him. He had never given up. Mubi's father had made films to show the world to her. He told beautiful stories. In truth, Mubi was very much like her father. Her mother could see it in the works Mubi created. She was kind-hearted, just like her father, unlike her mother. All this time, her mother had never been particularly kind to Mubi. If only she had been more attentive, perhaps Mubi wouldn't have had to endure her struggles alone. Mubi realized that they had been living together all this time. After her father's passing, her mother had become the sole breadwinner, raising Mubi on her own. Yet, her mother had never complained and had always been there for her, even if she wasn't always the most attentive. Mubi broke down in tears in front of her mother and asked if she hated her. She apologized for underestimating her mother's love, even though her mother had always given her everything. Mubi's mother took her hand and promised to be more attentive to her daughter. She wanted them to live happily together forever. Meanwhile, Guillaume made a big decision. He sold all the films he had collected over the years, some to Jong-hoo and the rest to Sung-ah. After clearing everything out, Guillaume sat on his porch, speaking as if to his brother. All this time, Guillaume had known so little about June. He pleaded for June to visit him in his dreams just once, promising he wouldn't be angry. He just wanted to see his brother one more time. Tears streamed down his face. There were so many things Guillaume hadn't had the chance to tell his brother. He hadn't even kept his promise to him. This time, Guillaume vowed to live well for June's sake, as he had learned how to survive. After overcoming their sorrowful times, Mubi and Guillaume finally managed to face their challenges together. Guillaume quit his job as a film critic and tried his hand at office work. Though he had no experience, he remained determined and kept pushing forward. Meanwhile, Mubi successfully launched her film. Though it wasn't a huge success, she refused to give up. Sung-ah, who had transitioned into producing, eventually agreed to invest in Mubi's projects. He said he would always support young directors in pursuing their craft. Now, with no films to critique or watch, Guillaume spent more time hanging around Mubi's film sets. To him, the only movie in his life now was Mubi. Every moment they spent together felt like a film with genres that constantly shifted. Sometimes it was a tear-jerker, then suddenly it turned into an absurd action comedy. But the best genre of all remained the melodrama. The story of their melodrama concluded with a sweet kiss between Guillaume and Mubi. Moral lesson from the story: if your car breaks down in a flower field, just pretend it's a romantic date, because nothing says love like roadside emergencies. And remember, when life leaves you stranded, at least make sure you're stuck with someone who can make you laugh or push the car.